And I'd like to invite my brother, Prime Minister Holness, to be able to address on the issue of the trade implications and aspects of the very challenging environment within which we have to prepare for other eventualities, but we do so with calm assurance. Thank you. Andrew.
Thank you, Prime Minister Motley. First, let me say thanks to your government and the people of Barbados for the excellent arrangements and hospitality.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Kindly for watching me for the first time, make sure you subscribe, like, share and comment. So guys, in today's video is about the Caribbean leaders. Caribbean leaders has come out and has sent a warning message to Donald Trump and also a response. We know that when Donald Trump warned Caribbean leaders to cut tie with Cuban government, and this made Caribbean leader being harsh with what Donald Trump told them. So kindly guys, let's watch this video until the end, and then I'll come back with more reaction.
Say thanks to your government and the people of Barbados for the excellent arrangements and hospitality. My own view, Mayor, is that the meeting went very well. And I join with my brother Irfan in filing a claim to your Labour Department for having us work till 1 o'clock in the morning. But it was all good for the people of the region, and I believe...
I'm going to beg Prime Minister Davis to defend me. Thank you.
And I believe the people of CARICOM can feel confident in the leadership. The issues that were addressed were relevant issues for the development of the region, and we grappled with them in real ways to seek solutions. One area of grave concern would be the declared change in U.S. trade policy. Many businesses have reached out. The private sector is indeed concerned. I believe that the posture of CARICOM is that we must be prepared. We can't approach this with any panic, and we should also accept that with these changes, the concern shouldn't only be that there would be disruption in the normal routine of trade, but that there could also be great opportunities for the region. The region has a well-established office for trade negotiations, and it has worked very well for us, and we are using the incredible resources in that office to study the challenges that could come and to provide us guidance, all the governments in the region, guidance as to how we should structure our trade policy to both mitigate any fallout but take advantage of the opportunities. We will therefore be conducting a very detailed review of our trade situation with the United States, and we hope that in another 3 or 4 months we will have a document which will give us a policy direction and give advice and support to the governments of the region as to how to treat with any potential change that may happen in U.S. foreign policy. We also discussed issues of security, and I know that Prime Minister Rowley will deal with the security issues, but while I have the microphone, it is of critical importance that the region treats with the issues of gangs, and Jamaica has taken a very strong position on treating with gangs. We see gangs as an existential threat. Obviously, the ultimate case would be with the situation in Haiti. But we also see gangs acting in ways and committing acts that can only be described as acts of terror. And therefore, I have called in Jamaica, and I'm making the call now at this CARICOM platform, that there needs to be a global war on gangs in the same way that there is a global war on terror. If the gangs are allowed free rein, they will challenge the effectiveness and undermine states, which we are seeing happening not just in the region in CARICOM, but in the wider Central and South America region. So we discussed the issue. I believe there is general consensus that in addition to treating with the security issue from a public health perspective and treating with the root causes of social disenfranchisement and economic marginalization, that there needs to be a firm hand in treating with the gangs, particularly as it relates to the transnational element of the gangs, which means that the countries in the region would have to have greater cooperation and sharing of intelligence and resources in tackling this very grave threat.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam President of Barbados, Dame Sandra Mason, distinguished heads of state and heads of government of the Caribbean community, Secretary General of the Caribbean Community, Secretary General of the United Nations, President of the European Commission, Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Chief Justice of Barbados, the Honorable Mr. Leslie Haynes, distinguished ministers of the Caribbean community, members of parliament, members of the judiciary, members of the diplomatic corps, ministers from Saudi Arabia, Canada, France, and indeed Special Envoy from the United Arab Emirates, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. You have heard everybody on this platform this evening. Now, what is clear is that it cannot be business as usual. We have come to Bridgetown in this year of 2025 at a time when the world is reeling from all kinds of problems. The climate crisis, we don't need anyone to tell us about it. Prime Minister Mitchell spoke from the heart with respect to the consequences of Hurricane Beryl in Carriacou, in Petit Martinique and Grenada, in Union Island, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines generally, to the farmers in Jamaica, and to the fisher folk and fishermen of Barbados. We know what it is each summer to have to hold our breath and to wait and to hope that this is not going to be our turn. We know firsthand how the world has become an awful place since the pandemic, where all of the warts and all of the scars and all of the cuts have become very, very clear and open for everyone to see, and where effectively the world has said that might is right, and where small states are often excluded because our orders are too minuscule to command attention. We live in a world where fake news is now the order of the day. And day by day, leaders, not just of governments, but of churches, of private sector, of households, have to worry about the fact that someone will post something that probably is not true about them. We live in a world where the opportunity for facts and shared values in common spaces is becoming rarer and rarer, simply because everyone is into their own echo chamber rather than in national entities being able to share and to relate so that we have a common perspective to keep our democracy strong. This meeting, my friends, cannot be business as usual. The Secretary General has already heard me on the fact that the only way we will make it through these difficult times is if we are prepared to be more unified and bolder than ever. I pray that those comments which have been made up here, and I thank Decon for also speaking on the matter of reparations and reminding us of the importance of the African Union this weekend. I was there, yes, with the Secretary General and Professor Arama from the African Exim Bank. And indeed, the partnership is strong, and we await the next meeting, the first one ever in person, on the 7th of September. We thank you, Ursula, for coming to the Caribbean, because in this world of grave difficulties confronting us at all levels, partnerships across the world will be important if we are going to survive the many challenges that are not unique to any one region, but indeed hold all of us in a very, very difficult position. I ask us, as we reflect on these matters, to recognize that if this institution of regional unity is to be fit for purpose in the 21st century, the third decade, then it may well require some decisions, Ralph, that those of you like Roosevelt and yourself may have wanted to see in the past, but have eluded us thus far. Freedom of movement of Caribbean people is at the center of who and why we are here. And I trust and pray that we can leave Bridgetown with clarity on this objective. Secondly, the issue of cost of living continues to bedevil too many of our people, and we run the risk that our traditional sources of food may well become more difficult to access because of the climate crisis and because of decisions on the movement of labor. And to that extent, while we have spoken at length always about creating new sources for imports while boosting our production regionally, we can no longer speak about it, but it must become a reality, because food and water are the new oil of this 21st century. At the same time, our education is in shambles in the region, and the quicker we come together and coordinate the reform that is necessary for it, the better we will be, because we cannot build out this region with the old educational systems of the colonial system that are hierarchical in nature and ignore the reality factor in the past, nor now guns. And the Secretary General of the UN has put it most appropriately in his speech. But suffice it to say, as I said on our own Independence Day in Barbados last year, we in this region are paying too high a price for the Second Amendment rights of Americans. And the reality is that we have come at this point with a George Bridge Declaration reached by heads of government in Guyana on the 25th of November last year that will allow us to address issues of strengthening our law enforcement, strengthening and reforming our criminal justice system, but above all else, treating crime as a public health disease, and also ensuring that we create the opportunities for our young people so that they are not taken on that path that has led us in this region to have one of the highest homicide per capita rates, regrettably, in the world. My friends, I have said these things, recognizing that if ever there was a time for us to make bare our hearts and our minds to each other as heads of government, it is at this point. And I trust and pray that if we are able to do so, then we truly can hold hands and walk in lockstep. This is not a moment today for me for a lot of long talk or a lot of long speeches. What is required of me as chairman is to ask each and every one of us to make that commitment, to expose our hearts and our minds and find common ground and common purpose, so as to ensure that as the world starts to fall in ways that none of us expected 20, 30 years ago or even 10 years ago, that we can hold a center, recognizing that we will always, always, always be stronger together. We have a responsibility to reform this institution. We have spoken for too long as to the need for independent funding mechanisms, whether it is assessed at the imports, whether it is an issue of a small fee for all border passings, people coming in and out of our borders, or whether it is the assignment of renewable energy licenses to CARICOM and our regional institutions. The time is upon us for settling the independent funding of this Caribbean community. In addition, we need to review the governance mechanisms and to recognize that there may be a need for a greater political voice alongside the administrative structures of CARICOM as we have come to know it over the last few decades. I pray that as we reflect on the urgent need for cooperation and unity, that above all else, we shall continue to see our people up front and center. In that regard, the Haitian people must be at the center of all that we reflect upon. Their situation continues to be of major concern to us, and it is not going to be sufficient just to be able to say that Haiti will have an election on November 15th. It is not going to be sufficient to just stabilize the security situation of Haiti. 30 years ago, when I came to public life, my prime minister at the time made his first trip when he was sworn in to Washington to deal with the issue of Haiti. 30 years on, we are dealing with it again. In the absence of a proper development plan that sees the people of Haiti, that gives them minimum rights of education and access to health care and all of the other basic rights that we fight for our own citizens. In the absence of that, Haiti will be around as a problem in another 10, 20, and 30 years. That cannot be the aspiration of Caribbean people. I ask us as we come to Bridgetown, therefore, to appreciate that we may not have the luxury of having a heads meeting that follows the usual template. But if we can, at this meeting, really expose our hearts and our minds to each other and agree on a common platform on critical issues, we will not get it all right one time, but we must have a common vision, and we must be prepared to recognize that none of us will get exactly what we want, but we must all work for what the people of the Caribbean need. And if we can do that, then we will have run successfully our leg of the relay race. It was once said, when the West Indies Federation broke, that 1 from 10 leaves 0. Today, the heads of government and the heads of state of the Caribbean region must show in a mathematical way that 1 times 15 is equal to 1. If 1 times 15 is equal to 1, then we shall be able to withstand all that is thrown upon us from the world and from within, and arise to the point where we will bring to our people a level of economic development, stability, and prosperity, in spite of the fact that for 6 months of the year we live in fear of that climate crisis, in spite of the fact that we are subject to international economic shocks, in spite of the fact that all of these things continue to be devilish. And why? Because we come from a proud people who have known what it is to be resilient and to rise above all challenges. Indeed, the challenges that we face in the 21st century at a personal level cannot come close to what our ancestors were forced to confront in the settlement of this modern region. So my friends, I want to thank you. I want to salute the people who performed on this platform. I want to salute my young citizens who spoke in a way that almost did not make it necessary for me to speak this evening on this platform. And I invite you, as you reflect on this meeting, to recognize that with a true Caribbean flair, we can do serious things while still remembering who we are and how we move as a people and our culture. And in that vein, I invite you back to Barbados between the 22nd and 31st of August for CariFesta 15. I say.
So I was in Miami or Hialeah on on Monday, and when there's a video where you were recognizing Alina Garcia and Dario Fernandez and Tomas Regalado, everybody applauded. They're so excited about your being the Secretary of State. Your homegrown son, and so they're just all excited. The other thing they're excited about is that they have somebody that is going to care about Venezuela and Cuba and Haiti and Nicaragua, all the problems, because you've been so vocal. So I guess, can you just go through sort of one by one and say, look, we know what are our options? Not that you know exactly what you're going to do, and a lot of these decisions will be made by somebody else anyway, but what are, like right now, look at what's going on in Venezuela. The Biden administration's allowed oil to flow. He stole the election, completely violated what Biden told him he would do. Maria Corina Machado probably was only alive because of your hard work making sure that Donald Trump put a tweet out. You look at Cuba now. They just dropped the state-sponsored terrorism, which makes no sense. We've got people like Jose Daniel Ferrer in prison. Kids as young as 14 in prison for peaceful protests. So, give me some of your ideas of what is possible.
Let's take one, but let's start with Haiti, because in many ways it's globally complex. And I think the chairman sort of alluded to this a moment ago. There's a fundamental problem in Haiti in that there is no legitimacy of authority. And I say this in recognition of the fact that some of the national police forces in Haiti have been extraordinarily brave. Despite being outgunned and outmanned, these guys and gals have stuck at their post and fought back against armed gangs. You know, when the most powerful person in any nation state is nicknamed barbecue, that is not a good thing. And this guy obviously is not named that for good reasons. He's not a cook. These are bad gang elements that are operating within Haiti and have destabilized not just Haiti, but threatened to destabilize the Dominican Republic, not to mention the migratory pressure that it places on the United States, on the Bahamas, and on other places in the region. There is no easy answer. The Kenyans are there, and I can tell you, I think they deserve a lot of credit for being willing to take on that mission. In recent days, missions from various other countries have arrived, El Salvador being among them, to sort of contribute to that effort. I don't think anyone can tell you they have a master plan for how you fix that overnight. I do think it does begin with stability and security. You've got to establish some baseline security, and it's not going to come from a U.S. military intervention. So to the extent that we can encourage foreign partners, and I would include foreign partners in the Western Hemisphere, who should be contributing to this effort, to provide some level of stability and security in Haiti so that you can explore the opportunities to have a transitional government that has legitimacy, that can ultimately lead to the conduct of elections, and then have governing bodies in that country that can bring about a nation state that can begin to build some of the things you need in order for permanency. But it's going to take a long time. And I say this with sadness in my heart. There have been good times, and there have been bad times and worse times in Haiti, but sadly, there's not really been a golden era in Haiti's history, and your heart breaks for these people and for what they've gone through. But you also, as a policymaker in the United States, recognize the implications it's had on our country. It's not just in the migratory pressures it's placed on us, but as I pointed out earlier, the threat it poses on a daily basis to destabilizing the Dominican Republic. You mentioned Nicaragua. It's a very weird situation, for lack of a better term. The Sandinistas earlier, one of the first things they did in the new year is they kicked out every nun in the country. They've gone to war with the Catholic Church, which was the last institution in the country capable of standing up to them. But now they've begun this process of amending their fake constitution to basically create a family dynasty so that Ortega and his wife will now be co-presidents. There's no democracy that's been completely wiped out. They have literally put plane loads of opposition figures and exported them here to the United States and around the world. They literally arrested anyone who signed up to run for president. They arrested you signed up to run for president, they put you in jail. So it's a big challenge, but our national interest is most challenged. Number one, because of migratory pressure. Number two, because the Nicaraguan regime is allowing people to fly into Nicaragua visa-free from anywhere in the world and then transit to the United States. They have become the point of entry for people from all over the world because you come in without any visa. They charge you $1,000 or whatever the going rate is today. And from there, you get on the migratory route and into the United States. They have been direct contributors to the migratory crisis we face at our southern border. And the third is the Nicaraguans have basically invited the Russians to establish a military naval presence in Nicaragua, in our hemisphere. That poses a threat to our national security. That needs to be addressed. Venezuela, sadly, is not governed by government. It's governed by a narco-trafficking organization that has empowered itself of a nation state. And we have seen, I believe, upwards of 7, 8, 9 million Venezuelans have just left the country. More are expected to leave. I was in strong disagreement with the Biden administration because they got played the way that I knew they would get played. They entered into negotiations with Maduro. He agreed to have elections. The elections were completely fake. They leveraged migration against us to get those concessions, and now they have these general licenses where companies like Chevron are actually providing billions of dollars of money into the regime's coffers, and the regime kept none of the promises that they made. So all that needs to be re-explored, because in Venezuela, you have the Russian presence, you have a very strong Iranian presence. The Iranians, in fact, are exploring, or in fact are beginning to build drone factories for the manufacture of Iranian drones in our own hemisphere. Not to mention the long practice of the Venezuelan regime of providing real but illegitimate passports to operatives for Hezbollah in our own hemisphere. And lastly, and I leave it lastly to Cuba because it's one that's been more enduring, the problem in Cuba basically is that despite being a communist regime and Marxism not working, is that they've decided, and they thought what they would do is that they would create this holding company. It's called Gaesa. It is a company that they own by the Cuban military, and that holding company owns everything that makes money in Cuba. If it makes money in Cuba, they own it, and it generates revenue for them. The Miami Herald just did an expose on Gaesa. And while you have electrical blackouts and you have all these other problems economically in Cuba, Gaesa is sitting on billions of dollars that they've generated for their permanency. In 2017, the Trump administration sanctioned Gaesa. Unfortunately, the Biden administration lifted some of those sanctions and restrictions a couple of years ago, which increased the amount of money they're able to generate through things like manipulating remittances and the like. And then yesterday, the Biden administration announced they were rescinding all of the sanctions on Gaesa, which basically the sanctions were this. You can do business with an independent individual Cuban, but you cannot, it's the regime that doesn't allow it. You cannot do business with anything owned by that government-run entity. And yesterday, they lifted the sanctions on them. Now, the new administration is not bound by that decision, but nonetheless, that's what's in place. Ultimately, the reality, the moment of truth is arriving. Cuba is literally collapsing, both generationally in terms of all the young people leaving, but it's also collapsing economically. They are now living on 20 and 21-hour rolling blackouts and some days longer because Marxism doesn't work, because they're corrupt, and because they're inept. And they're going to have a choice to make, those that are in charge there. Do they open up to the world? Do they allow the individual Cuban to have control over their economic and political destiny, even though it threatens the security and stability of the regime? Or do they triple down and just say, we'd rather be the owners and controllers of a fourth world country that's falling apart and has lost 10% of its population in the last 2 years? And that's a dynamic that they're facing right now. I hope that they will choose the path of empowering the individual Cuban, so that the individual Cuban has the ability to do what virtually the peoples of virtually every other country in the hemisphere have been able to do at least once in the last 60 years, and some more than once, and that is elect their leaders, vote for their leaders. You think about what happened here today. The Cuban people have no idea what it's like to have an authority figure or someone in charge and power, like I am as a U.S. Senator, sitting here having to answer questions from his colleagues, and also having to have people in the back screaming and protesting against you. You can't do that to a Cuban official. You can't question their decisions. The Cuban people have never been able to participate in a political process for almost 70 years now. And they're entitled to that as much as the people of Colombia and Argentina and Paraguay and Peru and virtually every other country in the region has enjoyed.
So let's assume you have this job, you're confirmed, you have the job for 4 years. What would your definition of success be?
With regards to generally?
Your job.
The alignment of our foreign policy to our national interest has been defined, the security, prosperity of the American people. And that's, and by the way, I would define that as success for the country. What I would define as success for the State Department is not just that alignment, but making the State Department highly relevant again. Sadly, and I think I've shared this with you in some of our meetings with many of my colleagues, what has happened over the last 20 years under multiple administrations is the influence of the State Department has declined at the expense of other agencies and also at the expense of national security councils, because it takes so long for the State Department to take action. And so increasingly you stop getting invited to the meetings. and they stop putting you in charge of things because it takes too long to get a result. So we want the State Department to be relevant again, and it should be, because the State Department has a plethora of talented people who are subject matter experts and who have skills in diplomacy, and it's not being fully utilized because increasingly on issue after issue, we've seen the State Department marginalized because of internal inertia, because of the way the structure works. So we have to be able to we have to be at that table when decisions are being made, and the State Department has to be a source of creative ideas and effective implementation. So I would define making the State Department relevant again in the setting of our foreign policy is critical. And I think that's something that maybe is not as perceived by the general public as it is by those of us who watch it on a daily basis.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Senator Rosen.
Well, thank you, Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, for holding this.
This matter with the Cubans and the nurses should tell us everything that we need to know. Barbados does not currently have Cuban medical staff or Cuban nurses, but I will be the first to go to the line and to tell you that we could not get through the pandemic without the Cuban nurses and the Cuban doctors. I will also be the first to tell you that we paid them the same thing that we pay Bajans, and that the notion, as was peddled not just by this government in the US, but the previous government, that we were involved in human trafficking by engaging with the Cuban nurses was fully repudiated and rejected by us. Now, I don't believe that we have to shout across the seas, but I am prepared, like others in this region, that if we cannot reach a sensible agreement on this matter, then if the cost of it is the loss of my visa to the US, then so be it. But what matters to us is principles. And I have said over and over that principles only mean something when it is inconvenient to stand by it. No, we don't have to shout, but we can be resolute. And I therefore look forward to standing with my CARICOM brothers. I wish I could say brothers and sisters, but brothers, to be able to ensure that we explain that what the Cubans have been able to do for us, far from approximating itself to human trafficking, has been to save lives and limbs and sight for many a Caribbean person.
Hello, welcome back. Hope you have watched a very powerful message to Ibrahim Traore from our leaders from Caribbean. So for those who are watching for the first time, Caribbean is just an island, but the origin of those islands came from Africa, from West Africa. So they were taken as a slavery from Western Africa. So the Caribbean country consists of Guyana, Haiti, Barbados, Bahamas, Jamaica. So those leaders came out and sent a tough warning to Donald Trump, because recently Donald Trump threatening those Caribbean leaders and Caribbean country. They say that Jamaica must cut tie with Cuban government, but we all know how the Cuba government really love Jamaicans, because Cuba has the best doctors across all over the world. When remember the time of COVID-19, the only country that helped a lot of people are Cuban doctor, because they did their very best, their best. So when Donald Trump came and told them that you must cut tie with the Cuban government, made those Jamaica PM being harsh with him, and now he has responded to Donald Trump. The response was, you guys, you have been using us for so long time. We know that you are a puppet to your government, and you have been stealing our resources from Jamaica and also Caribbean, because those Caribbean have a lot of resources. In terms of tourist attraction, Jamaica has the best tourist center, and Donald Trump and his government, they stole a lot of resources from those Caribbean countries, because they are calling Jamaica and others that is a third world country, and these people must stop calling us a third world country. We are not a third world country. In fact, we are the first world country, because when it comes in terms of resources, we black people, Africa and Caribbean has the natural resources all come to Africa, but this colonization is the one that is affecting the people of Africa and Caribbean. And that's why we want to do away with colonization. We want our full democracy, because we are given the fake democracy. And that is the message from the P. Miamotli, the president of Guyana, the president of Barbados. And also the president of Guyana said the same to to Donald Trump. You must respect others' country, and you must stop calling us a third world country. We were not the third world country, we were the first world country, because the economy of United States is being driven from Africa. A lot of minerals are coming from Africa, and that's why when Ibrahim Traore maybe he came in power and started telling people the truth about the evils that these people has been doing to Africa and Caribbean, those West country feel angry with Ibrahim Traore, and that's why they wanted to arrest Ibrahim Traore, they wanted to kill Ibrahim Traore, and people came out in large numbers because they are seeing Ibrahim Traore as the Thomas Sankara. Because those people, they killed Thomas Sankara, they killed Patrice Lumumba, they killed Muhammad Gaddafi, and now they are planning to kill Ibrahim Traore. And that is the message from the Guyana president. And they have united, because Caribbean is just an island and it has a very minimal population. As per now, Jamaica has only 2.8 million population, and people are living outside are over 3 million. You can see how that island is really suffering, but it has a very best tourist center. So we must support what is going on now, and they said enough is enough. Donald Trump, just stop interfering with the business of Caribbean. You cannot use us for so long that taking us as a puppet to them. We know that these people, they don't like any brave leader. They just want a puppet leader. They don't like a visionary leader. So kindly guys, for watching me for the first time, make sure you subscribe, like, share and comment. Let me see reaction on comment section about the response to Donald Trump. Bye for now.